No, I mean,
about
like,
that.
you want to go thought crime? Like, I'm sorry. If I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified.
Well, that's the
you
game
wouldn't have
theory
done
I was
that.
talking
You
about
wouldn't
earlier.
have. You wouldn't have done that before.
That's not an immediate.
No, you wouldn't
that's
have done
not
that
who I
before.
am. That's
No.
not what I believe.
It is the reality the left has
but
created.
I'm because of DEI, it begs the question when you see a black pilot, you wonder, you say, I hope they are qualified. I wouldn't think that if the CEO of United or these airlines would reject DEI and say excellence is the ultimate standard. Is if I'm dealing with somebody in customer service who's a moronic black woman, I wonder, is she there because of her excellence, or is she there because of affirmative action? It almost creates thought patterns that are not necessarily wholesome. It creates resentment, doesn't it, Heather? No one really cares when it's HR managers. No one cared when it was, just kind of paper shufflers or even engineers. But now when it's like, wait, hold on a second. You're going to remove my appendix and you're a black lesbian.
Charlie Kirk has no problem putting his true beliefs about anyone who isn't a white, rabid conservative like him on full display.
So it hurts my heart because doing what I love has been kind of taken away from me to please other people. Yeah, that's the point, Simone Biles. You're representing your nation, you're selfish sociopath. You kidding me? We are raising a generation of weak people like Simone Biles. Again, if you want to be, if she got all these mental health problems, don't show up. She's an incredible athlete. Of course she's an incredible athlete. I'm not saying, I just said she's probably the greatest gymnast of all time. She's also very selfish. She's immature, and she is a shame to the country. She's totally a sociopath. Of course she's a sociopath. Andrew said she's not a sociopath. What kind of person skips the gold medal match? Who does that? It's a shame to the nation.
LeBron James is a self-interested, narcissistic, and we know he's not very smart. He does these press conferences where he thinks he's making sense spiritually and freedom of speech. But he's a product of his time. What would you expect from LeBron James? It's cool to insult America. It's cool to sell yourself out to China. Not very bright, not wise, not somebody of good character, but is a blowhard. He'll never have to apologize. He'll never have to admit failure. And of course, everyone knows that LeBron James chronically cheats on his wife. Obviously, he's an NBA player. Savannah James should be asked about that. Hey, how do you feel about your husband cheating on you all the time? But that's just how the NBA works. The whole thing is an open marriage. He's immoral in almost everything he does. He shouldn't be lifted up, but I don't think most Americans do. He would obviously stand for the China national anthem, and he can't even show a modicum of respect for the country that has given him everything.
Including generational black athletes like Simone Biles and the right wing's favorite target, LeBron James, spreading baseless lies and playing into the bigot stereotypes that his base responds to.
Thomas Sowell and Justice Clarence Thomas are far better black role models to celebrate than Martin Luther King. Period. End of story.
While also having the gall to tell the black community which role models they should look up to while smearing the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
It's Holy Day, Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And we said some things today, and we challenged some of the primary doctrine that is running modernity. If you disagree with our take on MLK, just listen to this episode. Give it a fair hearing. Just say, hey, maybe I don't agree with Charlie. Maybe I think he's the best person to live in the 20th century and that he's worthy of worship, which is effectively what this society demands. Then fine, just listen to the episode and maybe you'll learn something. We talk about the positives. And then we also get into some of the other implications of this. We're a truth-seeking show. But I can say declaratively, this guy is not worthy of a national holiday. He is not worthy of godlike status. In fact, I think it's really harmful.
The gross take even got some pushback and criticism from black conservatives like Pastor Darnell Scott, Armstrong Williams, and the Blaze's Delano Squires. And reading tweets like this about newly hired New England Patriots coach Gerard Mayo, where Kirk twists Mayo's words about race to claim that Mayo will discriminate against white players. It's no surprise that he chopped it up with the one and only Jason Whitlock to defend and double down on his bigotry. As usual for Jason Whitlock's terrible show.
The response was disappointing because some people, instead of dealing with the substance and or my
very public track record of hating bigotry and racism and also associating with people of all sorts of different backgrounds, they started to call me racist. And I'm not saying it's because of this, but Black America was getting richer, they were getting stronger, and families were largely still put together before the Great Society, Voting Rights Act, and Civil Rights Act. 60 years later, Black America is in a worse position. I'm not saying it's because of the Civil Rights Act. I'm not saying it's because of the Voting Rights Act, but somewhere something went awry. You know, kind of going off your speech, I could have done the old conservative thing. I could have hid in the corner, said, you know what, I'm so sorry, how dare I? Because I saw the chatter increasing. I saw the right-wing intelligentsia saying, no, Charlie, it's a career ender. You don't do this. You just say MLK was awesome, and you don't ask questions, and you just kind of walk away. I said, you know what, I'm not going to do that anymore. I think that kind of attitude is destructive and wrong, and we felt the pressure that day. We were getting text messages of people saying, Charlie, this is going to end your career. Charlie, you'll never be back in decent circles. And I said, you know what, honestly, I don't subscribe to that. I'm going to trust the Lord. I know what we're saying is true. I was disappointed because I said, listen, guys, you could hate what I'm doing. You could criticize it. But if you're just going to throw the R word around like a Frisbee because I dare to question somebody who I consider to be a false idol of the modern cult of anti-racism.
Whitlock nodding along with approval is all the proof you need to know that Kirk is hitting all of the right-wing talking points. Characterizing his racist opinions of MLK as valid criticism allows Kirk to use free speech as a crutch to shield him from criticism of what he and Whitlock are trying to do here, whitewashing both the continuing and historical racially motivated crimes that our country was founded on, while demonizing anyone who wanted to correct the historical wrongs.
The thought, of course, is there's only one person in the 20th century that gets a federal holiday, and it's Martin Luther King. I can name at least a dozen people more deserving in the 20th century of a federal holiday than MLK. There are much better figures, such as Billy Graham in the 1960s, who had a lot more to do with the passage of the Civil Rights Act, who gets no credit than Martin Luther King. People forget Billy Graham had White House Oval Office meetings. Billy Graham led the Crusades for a moral awakening. What I'm trying to counter is the reason we talk about race so much is because we have a federal holiday to a guy that talked about race all the time. We celebrate the Civil Rights Act more than the American founding.
Kirk rehashing this old played out argument is just another sad attempt to tell people to shut up about conversations about racism and race in America. Because to Kirk and other conservatives, racism can't exist if you don't talk about it.
The multi-decade incubator of DEI was housed in the Department of Justice post the Civil Rights Act. The attitude, the enforcement, the precision that the DEI bureaucrats operate with was all workshopped in the Department of Justice in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And just now are we seeing it in corporate America, and we've seen this cancer metastasize. What started as a good intention to try to eradicate the injustices of saying that, you know, only whites can eat at the restaurant has tragically metamorphosized into a beast that has even more hatred than some of the elements of the antebellum South.
You heard that right. Charlie Kirk thinks that the Civil Rights Act and its legacy have brought about more hate than the antebellum South. This is what real-world white supremacy looks and sounds like. And as much as we'd like to ignore the Jason Whitlocks and the Charlie Kirks of the world, this rhetoric simply cannot go unchecked.